What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the 13th episode of the 9Trick podcast with a very, very, very special guest. We got Matt Hippogriff. I don't know your last name. I won't say it out in the stream. We got Matt. That's how I'm going to refer to him today. And he is the head of esports at NMSU, correct? I don't know if that's the correct title.
Yeah, I mean,
technically
it's the director. It's also in a lot of other, because it's a student organization, so you could also say I'm the president. But yeah, the terms that are used don't really, they can, a lot of different terms can be used. So
awesome. Anyway, he's the head honcho over here at NMSU, and he does a great job. Obviously, he's pretty much the reason why we're here in the first place. How I mentioned your name here earlier, Hippogriff. What is the origin of your little gamer tag there?
It's pretty boring, actually. So League of Legends was the first game that I really sunk a lot of time into directly out of high school. And so my original name was actually a name that I will never mention publicly. It wasn't a good name. But my friends were looking up unique names that were becoming available. And they were looking up mythical beasts or something. And they found Hippogriff. And so they're like, hey, we found this name that's available. Do you want it? I'm like, sure. It's funny because a lot of the time people in solo queue will ask me, they'll be like, are you a Harry Potter fan? I'm like, no, I never really watched or read any of the Harry Potters. I did play Warcraft, though. The spelling is incorrect for Warcraft, but...
I felt that. That's good, though. I didn't know that League of Legends kind of did the name. Is it like when there's inactive accounts, they just delete them and then just let the names go?
Exactly. They'll purge them. I don't know if they still do it, but they did it in the past. Because now they have the Riot IDs for Valorant, which are somehow tied to your League account. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think if you have a Riot account, it just kind of talks to each other. And that's kind of how it goes. But that's awesome, man. And you talked a little bit earlier about League of Legends. Now, is that your favorite video game ever? And if it isn't, which one it is?
I mean, it's my favorite multiplayer video game. This is a tough one because StarCraft, in my opinion, is the ideal esport, but it's so draining to play. League of Legends, okay, I can control one character. I have a team that I can also blame if things go wrong. It's not always my fault. But in StarCraft, you don't have that luxury, so you control everything. And everything is your fault, and so League is nice because you can sometimes toss the blame on other people.
You could be like, "Damn, my top."
But yeah, I don't. If I had to choose my favorite single player game, that's a tough one. I would probably say Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance.
Wow,
it's not anything it's not anything super unique. It just has a nostalgia effect. I played it when I was really young. The Game Boy was the only system I had, and so
nice. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I used to play a lot of old Game Boy. I don't remember what my Game Boy was called, but it was it literally just was a rectangle with buttons on the side and a fucking screen in the middle.
The Micro?
Yeah, it was the Micro one. Yeah, that's the only Game Boy I've ever had. And that was the first video game thing, but that's pretty awesome. I think I remember playing a Metro game. I don't know if it was specifically Metroid, or it was one of those things where I had Mega Man, Metroid, and some other game Contra or some shit, but I don't know. But I definitely respect those gaming choices. I'm not a League of Legends fan. I don't know what's going on the screen. It's just a bunch of colors and clicking for me. I've played it once, and that was the tutorial, and I was I had to press space to move my camera to my character. If not, it would just take me back to the spawn or something like that. I don't know what that is, character tracking or whatever, but that was just a terrible experience.
It's funny because when I first started playing League, so from the first day that I played League of Legends till the time that I actually just started playing it normally, it was a good 3-4 month period. because I downloaded League of Legends and I played one game and I'm like, this is stupid. I can play this custom game in StarCraft. Like, this is just a custom game in StarCraft. Why would I ever play it here? I think that I played Singed too, and Singed doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to a new player who hasn't seen him be played yet. Long story short, if you don't play League, you turn on your poison and you leave a poison trail. And that's really all he does. He throws glue on the ground and he runs around really fast, poisoning everything. So like, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to a new player. Like, I'm like, oh, he's not a mage. Like, I don't throw fireballs and like drop AoE bombs. Like, what does he do? And so I was like, this game's dumb. I'll never play it again. And then sure enough, like 3 months later, I was like, okay, I can see the point of playing something like this long term because of rank and whatnot, and learning the characters, learning the game, learning the universe.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that I really envy about like League of Legends as like a game in general, is like the ranking system is like insanely addictive, like close to Halo 2, Halo 3 ranking addictive. So I was like, you know, that's the only reason why I would play the game. But if I wanted to play the game, I'd have to have like a chart on how to make a build for a character in this certain situation for that sort of map. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's how everybody starts out. Is back in the day, it's like looked down upon, but like you pull up a mobile fire build. I haven't pulled up that website in years, but when I was first learning the game, I was like literally just copying the same exact build every single game.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it gets a little complex, especially if you don't have anybody who can help you out or like point you in the right direction. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And there's so much sensory overload from everything.
Damn. Yeah. I don't know. That game's like reading Mandarin to me. But that actually transitions us to our next topic. Obviously, you are the head of esports now. You do no longer play for any of the teams, even though I think you should. But what got you into like the NMSU esports? I know you did start off as a player first, I'm guessing. What game was it, and how did you get started?
So a long time ago, it was like, I think it was like 2013 or 2014. I was playing a lot of League of Legends. I was burnt out from high school and college. I wasn't taking care of myself physically or mentally. And so like I was doing pretty poorly in a lot of my classes. I lost a scholarship, and I looked at it, and I think in one of those years, 2013 or 2014, like a serious League of Legends team started forming. And I was like, damn, like that would have kept me around. Like that would have forced me to like pull myself up out of that and like focus heavily on school, as well as enjoy, you know, being on a team, all the joys that come with growing in a team environment. So 2014, 2015, 2016 passed, and I moved around, was doing different various jobs. But then I was back here in Cruces, and my friend told me that they were starting a program up again. They were like it was an official club. Because back then, I don't know if it. I know very little about what happened in 2013, 2014 with League of Legends, but I know that they had started a chartered club in 2016. And so I showed up to that. I actually wasn't a student at the time, and I was just curious because I was like, I'm interested in what's happening here. And I know from being a player, you kind of know that there has to be some sort of governance, or it's just a bunch of friends who are eventually going to rip each other apart and stop playing together.
Yeah.
Because like
that's usually how it goes.
Exactly, because if you don't have somebody to look outside from like an objective perspective who isn't emotionally tied to the win or loss, it causes a lot of friction between the players. And so I was like, okay, I'm interested to see what's going on here. I showed up to one of the meetings, saw that there was like a League of Legends team, and I think there were some Dota players, and there was a CS:GO team at the time. And so I was just interested. I started managing league teams. I would help coaching, or I would help coach our B and C teams, but I kind of, I've never really been like a top tier league player or like truly like studied the game, because you have to do one or the other. You have to know, like, you still have to learn how to interact with other people and how to coach human beings, but you have to also have the knowledge component as well. And so I never really coached League of Legends. I did a lot of managing. I would do a little bit of attempted coaching from here time to time. And then Overwatch came out. Overwatch, me and a lot of our friends dove into it. I really wasn't ever like a top tier player, but I've watched a lot of like coaching videos. I watched a lot of just all sorts of stuff from a wide variety of channels on YouTube, as well as like meeting other players, having discussions with players about what works. And I had generally got a pretty good feel of the game from an understanding perspective at the time. If you ask me now, I'm not going to be able to tell you anything about the game, but I got a pretty good feel of Overwatch, and I started coaching for it. In fact, a lot of the players carried me to my highest rank. I hit Masters was where I peaked at, but I didn't. I played with the team to get to that. I didn't actually play that. Pretty much. But yeah, so after that, then I started, because at the time I was kind of doing a lot of the coordinating stuff anyway. And so I was like, I enjoy so I have started at the ground level and I worked my way up, and I'm like, okay, I understand coaching, I understand managing. And I'm like, now I kind of want to start stepping into like a leadership position. So in like 2017 or the 2018 period, I think that was when I was still an Overwatch coach, but I was starting to transition into, because I was doing a lot of the logistics for the club anyway, for like traveling. Our Overwatch team went to Dallas in 2018, and it was an awesome experience because they got to play on the Dallas Fuel setup. But yeah, so I started doing a lot of coordinating stuff. I would work with some of the coaches to actually go and travel around and talk to high schoolers alongside. I think we met with several of the NMSU people who would go out and recruit students just from the academic side. And so we went to a couple of their meetings, and so we were doing a lot of stuff. I eventually met my current boss. I saw that there was going to be a seminar in Albuquerque for the NMAA. And so I traveled out there. I sent out an email first and was like, hey, I'm currently the head coordinator for NMSU esports. And I was like, we're currently the biggest in the state. Blah, 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 blah. We're one of the most established organizations in the state. Is it okay? Do I have your blessing to show up and on behalf of NMSU and our student organization? And they said, sure. I went out there and I met my current boss who, so he hired me. I moved to Chicago for 2019. Wow, yeah, it was 2019. So I moved out to Chicago for all of 2019, and I had severed all official ties with NM State Esports, but I was still in the officer channel, still giving feedback, giving advice, because my current job has given me a lot more connections across the entire United States with all sorts of different programs. I interact with I've interacted with over 100 different esports programs through like lots of messaging and running leagues. But right before the zombie apocalypse and everybody had to stay indoors, I was lucky to escape Chicago and move back because we were working remote most of the time anyway. We had stopped going to the office. And so I asked our leadership, I'm like, hey, can I go full remote anyway? Because I'm kind of losing my mind out here. I don't know people here. And also I want to spend a lot of my free time help building this program that I had already started like from its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were completely okay with it. And so I was lucky that I was able to move back. And so I came back and took a few classes at NMSU and was like, okay, I'm ready to take on this position. And so I went through the proper channels to become elected because it is an electoral process. And so.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and I know we've talked about it a little bit between ourselves, but I wanted to let you have the platform to speak your story.
Sure.
And it's interesting because you did say you left to Chicago, and you're not originally from Cruces, right?
No, yes, I'm born and raised Cruces.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
Yeah, I was born here, raised here. There were only 2 periods of time where I've lived not in Cruces. That was in 2014. I moved to Roswell for 6 months.
Mm.
That was an interesting period of my life.
That's a fun place to live.
Yeah. And then in 2019, I moved to Chicago. So those are the only 2 times I've ever not lived in Cruces. But other than that, I was born and raised here.
That's awesome, man. And obviously, you said you pretty much rose to the top, like logistically. I know there's obviously been hiccups here and there with people or events struggling or making you struggle to get to the top. But how challenging is it now that you're established in your job? You're also, I believe, a student too, right? You're so obviously.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you have NMSU esports. How challenging is it to juggle those 3?
Well, to be honest, I haven't been able to put as much time as I want to into the program. It burns in the back of my consciousness or my conscience that because I've been, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate, working at home and having a proper work-life balance is really difficult when you work at home. And so adjusting to that, I have felt bad because I'm like, I should be devoting, because in the past I wasn't working full time when I was with the program. And so I was able to devote all of my time and energy into it. But now I'm like, it's hard because when you're not seeing all the people that you are impacting, it's harder to be motivated. But then when you for example, the other day when we had the Call of Duty thing here, I was really, really, really motivated because just being around other people in person makes a world of difference. And so, I've been, to be honest, I do feel bad because I haven't been able to sink as much time as I want to into the program, but I'm getting used to it, and I'm learning the work-life balance of working at home. And so,
shout out my mom; she's in the background. But yeah, that's pretty awesome, then. And I know you're obviously a busy guy. If I were in your position, I'm getting paid to do something. I'm not getting paid to do something. If you look at it like from a financial standpoint, you got to prioritize one. But we obviously do appreciate you, trying your best, and we know you do try your best, especially with relatively small clubs, relatively small organization on the grander scheme of NMSU. Obviously, we don't bring too much money to NMSU. It's not like we're like one of the bigger selling points.
Well, actually, interesting enough. So we are technically one of the biggest clubs on campus. I know that because in our prime a couple of years ago, we had like 50, 60, 70 active members, and that puts us up there with frats, which are not student organizations. Now it's hard to tell because we don't see faces and we don't have people filling out papers in person, so it's hard to tell. But technically, because I have met many people who through like the high school leagues and through all the different channels that I have that actually have come to NMSU. And so we technically, we have not measured that metric yet because
obviously we can't.
Well, the truth is it's going to take time, and it's going to take us reaching out. That is a metric that is probably really important for us to eventually get, because if we are bringing students in, then the university is going to
look at us. differently.
Sure. And that's how we bring money into our own organization, is by showing them, hey, we're actually pooling students. This is actually evolving to become a similar ecosystem to that of athletics. And so, just like to say that we actually are
pretty big. Yeah. Now that you think about it, you're right. We were hosting Siege Saturdays. I'm sure you've seen me ping the entire NMSU chat 40 times over. But we were actually like talking to like some of the kids, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're high schoolers, and we're just thinking about esports like as one of the main selling points." One of the players that we actually put in the varsity chat, because he was like relatively more mature, actually a college age student. He was like, "Yeah, it's literally between NMSU and UTEP for school, and if I could compete somewhere, I want to compete at NMSU." UTEP obviously is the University of Texas at El Paso. Disgusting college, I hate it, but it's the one that's like 15 minutes down the street from me. They actually don't have a established esports organization. I think they have a club for like Smash Bros, something super small. I don't know. It's like a Facebook club. But that was also one of like the selling points of why I decided to go, and decided to actually go and live on campus. And I was like, hey, maybe I'll get some time in a lab or something. But COVID had other priorities. But yeah.
If it's not one thing, it's another. I've learned through this whole process that it's everybody tells you throughout your life, it's like, there's going to be struggles, there are going to be hardships, you just got to keep going, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. And I'm like, now this is just another thing, because we've been through the meat grinder before with other things. We were super excited to get the lab, and then we don't actually get to access it because the quarantine hit. And so I'm like, everything just bounces off of me at this point. I'm like, okay, that's like, we'll get through this. We'll eventually get into the lab. But I've become very calloused to that.
Point. And I know I'm pretty sure you're tired of every single like esports player that you govern telling you, hey Matt, when's the lab? What's gonna happen to the lab?
No, it breaks my heart every single time, because I'm like, well,
can't really do anything about it.
Well, technically, there are probably a few avenues that we can start working through. It's just it's a lot of meetings that have to be set up, and so hopefully soon, I'm going to be meeting with our advisor again to start that process up again, because to put things in perspective, the entire university is ever since quarantine, they've been in firefighter mode. They've been putting out fires here, there, and everywhere. And so things like our program, it's not that it's not important to them, but it's just like, some of the things just fall lower on the spectrum of priority. And so, every time a player messages me about it, it breaks my heart, and it's good. It's good pressure to put on me, because then I'm like, well, shit, now I'm gonna have to go start, like, I do have to go start kicking doors down soon, because we are actually slowly beginning to transition out of quarantine, and so
it's
don't be discouraged to bug me about the lab, because it's good. It's positive pressure that will get things done. And I need to be reminded, why I care about this, because, like you say, like, I'm not being paid to do it. And so the players are why I care about it. The students are why I care. And so when I am getting bugged by them, it's not actually bothering me, and it's positive pressure. Because ideally we would be in person, and I would feel that a lot more heavily, because somebody online,
Discord message.
Instead of looking at some pixels on a screen that are telling me something, it's a human being telling me to my face stuff. And so, it's hard. It's been hard to stay motivated through quarantine, but hopefully soon we'll be out of it.
Yeah. And thankfully, the New Mexican legislature is actually on top of things. You still have to wear a mask and all that stuff. They're actually, protecting most of the people that are compliant. So hopefully, beginning next semester, we can figure something out with that sort of stuff. And I'm sure, like you said, you just got to roll with the punches, and we'll be at that place that we want to be at. I'm sure you've seen, obviously with the Call of Duty League, there's a bunch of big colleges, Florida, all the ones in Texas, California, and you see like a lot of like those huge like sponsors for esports programs. So I think one of the Dallas schools was like sponsored by their electric company or something like that. How does it make you feel? Not in a negative way, but how does it make you feel that people are finally taking it like serious in places other than here?
I mean, well, this is nothing new to me. So at this point, it's like, oh yeah, that's the world of esports. Like, it's just going to keep growing. It's just going to keep getting bigger, especially as the older generations who don't play video games. I mean, as time goes on, they pass away, new generations come up. You look at all the 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, video games are the coolest thing to them. There is absolutely no stigma in their generation or like a stereotype of the average gamer. Whereas for 20-year-olds, it's still a little bit mixed. You know, you keep moving up the generational ladder, and you know, like 40-year-olds. There are a lot of 40-year-old gamers, but a lot of them are kind of closet gamers, or you know, they'll play mobile games or they'll play stuff a single player on like their Xbox. They're not heavily invested into the world of esports, and so it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see a lot of the big sponsors, and I mean, it was just at some point. I think like 2014, 2015. That was like the point where everybody was like, okay, this is pretty much not going to go away. Video gaming is it is the biggest media industry of all of the media industries. And so esports playing in a competitive environment, it's technically, whatever you want to call it, it's existed for a long time. And now it's actually coming to light. And so I hope that one day we can actually stand up to the world stage and not get destroyed by Korea and China every single time. Because Korea went through this evolution like 20 years ago. In the 90s, they got out of a depression because of StarCraft and competitive games through StarCraft. And so, but yeah, to answer your question, because I'm rambling.
No, that's all good. I want to hear it.
But yeah, it's exciting to see. We've entertained the idea to give you a little look under the hood. We've entertained the idea of sponsors, but we have learned that it's one, they're very social media focused, which is fine, and it only makes sense. And we don't have like impressive, like we don't have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, but it's an area that there's a lot of red tape put to us by the university as well. For example, we're a Pepsi school. So we can't have any products other than Pepsi to sponsor us. And so we've decided to take our time and actually because this is not an area of my expertise. And so whenever I encounter an area that's not my expertise, I take it slow and try to gather as much information from people who do know what they're doing before I dive in. Because when it comes to money, you want to be very, very careful about how things are structured. You also don't want to sell your soul as much as possible. You have to do a little bit of soul selling, but as much as possible, you want to keep the spirit of the organization alive. And so that's a tough balance to strike sometimes. We see it within the FGC compared to PC esports. They hate a lot of the big money. And so I generally I don't want to say like agree with that viewpoint, but I understand why it's really frustrating to have people in suits come in and say, hey, you need to do this and you can't do that anymore. And it's like, well, then where's all the fun in it? And so it's a balance that has to be strategically planned around so that as much people as possible are positively affected, and we bring in the proper sponsors that we like and we actually believe in their product. And so
Yeah, definitely. And I think I remember you telling me like we're also like a Dell school or something like that. So it's not like we can go to, iBuyPower and be like, hey, let's get a sponsor. Maybe we could do something with like
exactly.
Alienware down the line, because Alienware is technically, a Dell product. Same thing with like Mountain Dew Game Fuel. We can't go and get G Fuel as a sponsor because they're not Pepsi, and Pepsi's going to be like,
actually, yes, they are. They are Pepsi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they actually are Pepsi.
Oh, wow.
Technically, the university would not have issues with that.
Oh, okay.
Again, you're bringing up all sorts of stuff that I'm like, oh, I need to spend more time doing all of this.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
no worries.
But,
I'm not going to
yes,
stress you out.
no, you're not. It's
alrighty.
No worries.
Awesome, man. And yeah, how about for you and yourself? I know you're currently a student. Do you have any plans at all to returning to competitive? Either Overwatch.
Don't have the time.
Overwatch 2 is right around the corner. It's gonna be there.
Overwatch. Jeff just left Blizzard.
Oh, that's
Jeff
true.
Kaplan left Blizzard. So yeah. But anyway, no, I don't have the time. I would love to. I actually play. So my boss, the company that I work for, he runs some sort of, I guess it's like an intramural league that we play in. And he has a bunch of his friends. There are a few of our coworkers from like our parent company and some of the other people we work with that are in it. And it's a blast. It's a cast. They cast it. They actually dress up on the finals in suits and stuff. And it was all just put up overnight. And it's gotten like, consistently it gets like 30 to 40 viewers, and then we'll get like 60 to 70 on the finals games.
Wow.
And so I do still scratch that competitive itch, but not in the university environment. And one of the other reasons why I don't is because I've learned that whenever you are in like a leadership position, you can't, it's not that you can't like be friends with everybody, because I am friends with a large portion of our organization, but whenever you get into like games and things get really, really heated, if you ever like pull the authority card on them, it just feels bad for everybody involved. Like it feels bad to the players, like, well, because for example, like if I'm a coach, right? Yeah. And I'm playing with my players, if I go back and review footage that I was in the game, what can happen sometimes is players will deflect blame back onto you. And it's like, well, because I was emotionally involved in the process of winning. And so it blurs the coach's ability to just look at things from an objective standpoint, and players can't turn around and get defensive and say, well, you did this here, so that's why I did this here, and that's where everything snowballed out of control. As well as if I ever get heated, it's just not a good look, and it's not a good feeling for everybody. And so whenever you step up into like the leadership positions, you kind of understand that I can no longer do that anymore. And be a part of that. So you kind of, it becomes like coaching. For example, I tell all of our coaches, I mean, it really does become a thankless job, because like it's really, really rewarding for you to see players grow. But players are always the people that are up on stage. The coach is never up on stage, but the coach does a lot of the heavy lifting, both the emotional labor in trying to, because a lot of students are young, and a lot of esports players haven't been through the ringer with traditional sports. And so when it comes to being torn down in a team environment and saying like, hey, look, you need to rethink how you're approaching this, Those players haven't ever had that experience before, and so it's tough on the coaches because they have to put the emotional labor in to actually get the players to have that realization. And so it can be pretty tough for the coaches, and so once again I find myself ranting, but
yeah, no worries. I kind of did the same thing with the Siege team. Towards like the end of the season, I was like, hey, what could we have done better as the coaching staff? And they were telling me stuff, and I was like, one, I didn't even realize that I was doing this, and this is terrible. Two, I don't even feel like I should be playing because I'm giving them like the worst fucking call outs ever, you know, worst coaching abilities. So I definitely understand what you're going.
And it to a degree, it kind of is the fat football coach saying you guys need to go run your lap.
Yeah.
Well, coach, why don't you run your laps? Like, you're fat. You need to go run your laps.
Yeah.
And so the same thing can happen because you can study the game and you can get a good perspective on how to become a better player and how to help people become better players. But then to put that into practice takes a lot of time too. So to do both of those things simultaneously will be more than a full-time job. It will eat all of your time because you have to be a good player as well as be able to break the game down and spend the time understanding the game. And so it's a difficult balance. And so to go back to the original question, I don't foresee it in the near future, simply because I'm not taking a whole lot of credits right now because it doesn't make a lot of sense for my position right now to be doing so, because my time is better spent doing work stuff, because I'm interacting with all sorts of colleges and high schools across the nation that are running esports programs. And so there is more value there for me than learning computer science.
Yeah.
If this was 5 years ago, 100% the school is the correct choice. But once you've started to gain the experience in an industry that's not really, it's still in the Wild West. You can only learn more about the Wild West by being in the Wild West.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
There aren't courses in the Wild West during that time period in America. Yeah. And so
definitely, man. And you were talking a little bit earlier about obviously a little bit more of the older esports, Dota, StarCraft, Counter-Strike. You have a little bit of experience with Call of Duty now. Call of Duty, and League of Legends, obviously. What do you think about Valorant? It's kind of like the Counter-Strike Chinese version of Counter-Strike.
Yeah, I've actually been... Well, the Chinese version, not China. Oh, God, I started getting into all I was going to say Crossfire, because Crossfire is the original, Valorant CSGO sort of clone made by an Asian company. But I've actually been... Valorant's the only game that I've been playing lately.
Me too. I've been playing a ton.
That's awesome. Yeah, my roommates, one of my roommates plays it a lot, and so I watch him play. When I first started playing Valorant, it was so frustrating to me because I was used to Call of Duty in that when I aim down the gun in a game,
it goes straight.
And my sight is wherever my sight is where the bullets go. Which is how it works in real life. Like if you're looking down a holographic sight, where that holographic sight appears is pretty much where the bullet's gonna go.
Yeah. And
so when I play Valorant, I'm like, this is dumb. Like I am shooting directly at them and it is not hurting them. Like my bullets start doing this around them, but my crosshair is directly on them. And so I was like, so the way I look at games and the way I evaluate a game, whether it's good or not, is that does it function and do what it's supposed to, as well as is it a rewarding game? Does it have a natural system that makes you feel good for doing it? Exactly. And so I'll look at games like that. I'll look at games like Fortnite and I'll be like, that's cool. It's a good game. I don't want to learn it because I don't want to learn spray patterns. I don't want to learn building. They're good games. I will never take that away from the players that play them. Like it functions and does what it's supposed to and it's rewarding. But I can't be bothered to learn the spray patterns. But lately, so I've been watching, and you know, as you watch players play, you kind of start to digest what you're supposed to do, especially not playing it. Like spending a long period of time not playing a game and just watching people play, and then you jump back into it and you're like, whoa, I know how to do this now. It also helps that because of work, I got Kovacs for free, and so I was playing a little Kovacs, and so that helped just getting that muscle memory in before you jump into an FPS.
Yeah. How do you think it's gonna transition over to the collegiate esports scene? You think it's gonna be almost the same as Counter-Strike? You know, Face it's gonna pick it up. CEA has already picked it up, I think.
Oh, definitely. Valorant. So Riot is very, very, very protective of League of Legends. It is almost impossible to run any sort of an official league with any sort of like. With high school students, it's pretty much completely barred off. You can't really do anything like to any sort of a league to any capacity. College students, it's pretty much the same. There are very, very, very few outside of their officially sponsored leagues that exist. And so Valorant has been a different story so far, though. They have been a lot more lax at first, and I think what they do is they like letting the community build things up, and then they kind of come in and this makes them sound like an awful, like evil corporation, but no, I don't think that it just makes sense for them to, hey, if we don't have to spend time building this up, if our game is so good that people will eventually build up a community, let's help foster that, and then when things are big enough, we can start slowly bringing ourselves into the mix so that we can make sure that our game is treated properly. Yeah, and that makes complete sense when you look at it from that perspective, and you don't have some deeper hatred of all the evil corporations. But yeah, it's eventually it'll start growing, and because it's only been out for less than a year now. Less than a year, yeah. Yeah, so they're letting everything flesh out, and it's definitely going to be a big college thing, just like League. Yeah, definitely. And Riot's good at doing that. Riot's good at eventually making it a big scholastic esport, and so. Yeah, because that's one of those games where there's not that much blood. You could turn it off if you really wanted to. It's not like Call of Duty where you're bound to see blood, no matter what you do. Blood will always be on. I just hope it doesn't. I kind of hope, but I also hope it doesn't turn into what like Counter-Strike turned into as of late. You know how Counter-Strike, there's like 40 billion different leagues, and there's a finals on Monday, and there's a finals on Wednesday, and a finals on Thursday for this tournament, this league, and that organization. I feel like maybe at the start it'd be okay, but I like how League of Legends has it where it's like the LEC, and then there's like the LCK and all these different. So that's the two different philosophies to approach. They're pretty much complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Riot takes complete control over their own IP and takes care of it, whereas Valve just throws their baby out into the wind and lets it do whatever people want to do with it. And so they both have their issues at the end of the day. And so, there are different pain points. Pain points with Riot's approach is, hey, I want to run stuff, but I am hamstrung and I can't run stuff. Whereas CSGO, it's like, oh, everybody can run it. Do whatever you want with our game. Oh, yeah. And so you get a bunch of different organizations that compete, and so yeah, they both have their ups and downs. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's cool for like mainly all the big people, right? It's, you get your Blast Pro Series, you get your FACEIT, you get your ESL back when that was still a thing. Too many at once. Or you have something like the fighting game composition. You know how, like you were saying, that they hate big money. Like their tournaments are literally they're still thrown in like hotel lobby rooms. There's only one big tournament that's in like an arena, and that's like EVO, and that hasn't been happening for like the past 2 years. And EVO got bought by Sony. Oh yeah, that's true. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to the future of EVO because fighting games. Yeah, true. Well, most people aren't really. There wasn't anything of a whole lot of value lost.
That's true.
But anyway, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Because yeah, if you want to see what like true communities built up around video games look like, there isn't a better place to look than the FGC communities.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
they're all local people and just all sorts of people from all sorts of different walks of life. I actually used to travel with my friends. I didn't play any fighting games, but I would travel with my friends who would play Ultimate Marvel 3, and that game was one of the best fighting games. Just from an outsider perspective, looking at it objectively, like again by those metrics that I defined earlier for good games, it is probably one of the most rewarding games to play, just because you get all of the feedback. So, do you know much about? Have you watched much Marvel?
I have not. I've watched similar games though. I watched like Mortal Kombat a lot. I used to watch a lot of Sonic Fox. That's his name.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Marvel, it's like. So there's what's called like touch of death in it. So once you get hit, people will usually do touch of death combos that will kill a character. But you have 3 characters, so you build your instead of selecting one character in like Mortal Kombat, you select 3 characters, and so you get that experience because it's hard to get in, and players there's a dance of actually getting that first hit and starting your combo, which is difficult, and it takes a lot of skill to execute. The combos, I would argue that they take a lot of skill to execute, because only the pros really pretty much consistently hit their combos, because it's like 50, 60 hit combos that go through multiple different, I forget what it's called when you use meter in that game. Hyper combos.
Yeah.
I think. Oh God, Marvel community, don't burn me at the stake. Anyways, I think it was one of the best fighting games to ever exist. And I hear from my friends, like, we talk about it and we discuss why, and it's like, yeah, it was one of the best games. In fact, it's actually starting to be revived again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to travel with friends, and they would go to Albuquerque, they would go to Arizona, and they would play Marvel against other people, and it was so much fun. You'd meet so many different characters, because it's funny, because in the world of like PC esports, a lot of the players are a lot more timid, just because that's what happens when you sit behind your computer and you're not interacting with people. Is you just lose. You're not flexing that muscle of social interaction, and so it becomes you become a bit more timid in person, which is fine, and you just have to build that muscle up again. Yeah. But when you go to the fighting game stuff, that's all they do. They're always in person, so everybody has like their own personality, and they all get in each other's faces sometimes, and there's a lot of emotions that run high, but it's an absolute blast. Yeah. The fighting game community will always have a special place in my heart, because I just love going and observing it. I'm not, again, I find myself saying this about a lot of games. Like, yeah, I observe that I am not like one of the top 1% of players, but it's still fun to just go and watch people get in each other's faces and meet all the different players. Yeah. That's always an experience.
That's like one of the main reasons why like old Smash tournament clips are like absolute classics, like Leffen and stuff like that, Hungrybox, all those old pro players and stuff like that. And yeah, fighting game community is awesome. I wish it was a little bit more prominent here at NMSU. I know we do have a Smash team. Shout out to them. But Mortal Kombat, where you at? And yeah, one of our last major questions here. What is your favorite NMSU team, and why is it the Rainbow Six one? I'm kidding. I can't do that to you. You're probably going to say League of Legends. It's okay. Real question here. The future of NMSU. Obviously, COVID's put a little bit of a shade over all things esports, all things in-person, collegiate-wise. Besides getting the lab open, which I know everybody's breathing down your neck about, what do you have planned so far for NMSU? If you that you can tell us that you can tell us, of course. We don't want you to break any NDAs or whatever.
if things, so one thing that is on the radar that is, I have learned to not talk about stuff anymore because because in the past I would get, because in the past I would get excited and be like, oh yeah,
we're gonna do
we
this.
got money for a lab. This is gonna happen. And so like for years, people were like, oh well, what happened with that? And I'm like, why did I say anything? Just wait for things to be done, so that once it's done, and this is something that I've learned from work too, is in any sort of like working for a company or anything, they don't announce stuff until it's out. Most of the time, of course, they'll do like hype stuff and whatnot, but we see what happens with that and stuff like Cyberpunk. Anyways, the only thing that I will talk about right now, because it's probably within a month's time frame, knock on wood, is our jerseys. We should be having a merch store set up with Archon clothing soon, and so I'm looking forward to that. Because once we get our own merch store set up, and once we gain access to the lab again, then things will start actually flowing again.
Yeah.
And the cog will start turning again. And so
you hear that, NMSU? Like, you guys got that stimulus money? Come buy a jersey.
True. That's a
little hint. Now, just in case it doesn't happen, we'll put a disclaimer here. It's in the works. Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. Don't get your panties in a bunch. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the podcast. We got one last question that I'd like to finish off with everybody here on the podcast. It's pretty much like what inspires you to do something. So for you, what inspires you to be a good organizer for, obviously, NMSU? And all the other stuff that you do, just in general. Who inspires you to be the leader that you are?
I think that watching people grow is the biggest thing that motivates you. Obviously, oh my gosh, my lips are becoming so dry. I think that it's the people. Like money is important and money is good to have. If you're doing anything, you should be making money doing it. If not, you need to find other people or find people who are willing to pay you for doing something. But it's the people. It's watching the players go through, because it's like one of my favorite things is when you get to, well, you experienced it the other day here with Call of Duty, kind of like the energy around like locker room talks, like, hey, like, locker room speeches, like, hey, we have a really important game coming up. Like everybody huddles around and gets emotionally involved, and it's a very, very intense feeling. I know for the players, that is why we're all here. We're not here. We like seeing those number go up on our screen, our ranks to go up. That's a good feeling. But the real deep motivator is like when you get into those really high intensity matches and you play and you have a good play and everybody sees that, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
Definitely. And
so watching other people experience that, as well as being able to facilitate that in whatever way is possible, as well as just seeing, because it's funny telling older people this, because they would have never expected to hear it, but you learn a lot of life lessons from video games.
Oh yeah.
Earlier I was joking about League of Legends, blaming my team, but that is something that you eventually, you go through the learning process of, I have to take self-responsibility. It's on me. It's on me. I could tell these players what to do, but most of the time they're not going to listen. They're going to argue back. It's not worth my time. And so stuff like self-responsibility, stuff like working in a team environment and learning to work with other people in a way that's effective and because when you're on a team, you're kind of like a hive mind of players. And so you will have good insights to the game, and your teammates and your coaches will have good insights to the game. and it's a process of mind melding all of that information, which happens in a group setting, which sometimes it can be an incredibly painful process because people aren't good at communicating, and so they'll very aggressively tell you something. Some people take that really and they brush it off. Some people get really hurt by that. And so it's learning how to take criticism and learning how to deal with those problems that you'll have to deal with throughout your entire life.
Yeah.
There's no avoiding working with people or interacting with people. And so, so just watching all of those skills grow and watching players grow is really the reason why I'm still in it. Because like you say, I'm not... in my job, I'm not getting the personal, I'm not seeing the players in person, which I guess I'm not with the university right now either because of COVID. But that is one of the deeper reasons why I'm still doing it without getting paid, is because it's just, I have met so many life friends too that when I travel now and I go to certain places, I'll be like, oh, hey, this was... I'll hit up one of our old Overwatch varsity players, like, hey, what are you doing? You want to go get a drink later, hang out for a bit? And so it's the people. No doubt about it. I know that's a generic response, but I have a pretty good explanation behind it, so it's not an empty response.
Yeah, you can actually say it because you actually know people. So
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Matt. I know you do a lot of work for us. It definitely does not go recognized, I guess. Hopefully you'll be somewhat compensated for it soon. In that way.
I'm not super worried. I would rather see, because it's difficult from the university's perspective, because it's hard to have somebody who's you hold people, you pay people to hold them accountable, right? Like if I have a bunch of volunteers helping me out, there's nothing stopping a volunteer from just walking off and going home and never showing up again.
That's true.
But money is how you hold people accountable. And so the university, one of the first things that would make sense for them would be to hire somebody. I would rather see our coaches get hired first because our coaches put in more work, but it's difficult because a lot of universities make the mistake of hiring a coach as their first hire, but then they tell the coach, you have to do everything. Oh, yeah. And so, it's something that like I want to be very careful about because I want them to somehow know that I have been here for so long and I want to keep watching this grow. Yeah. If there is money, I do want it to go to coaches first because I already work full time. Obviously, eventually, I do want to get somewhat compensated, but it's not like
it's not like the top of the pyramid list.
It's not something that other people are doing this and they don't have other jobs, and so they need to pay bills too. Yeah. And so once they get situated and comfortable, and if we can, because it's difficult because we just have to navigate that area of I will watch over things and make sure that things are going well. If there is money, we need to pay coaches first because coaches have they actually sink the most time in. Because I know our lead coach, he's actually my roommate right now. He'll spend a lot of time just watching VODs. He goes and meets for hours on end with the players. And so I'm like, that is stuff that should be paid and it should be compensated. And so I would rather see that stuff happen first until I actually because at the moment I don't have a lot of day-to-day duties. It's a lot of hunting stuff down and getting stuff done, and then I don't have to touch it again. And so for things that we can already define day-to-day duties for, that's what a job is you have defined day-to-day duties and you execute those duties and then you get paid for it. And so, and again, there's a lot of, we want this to become one of the most successful programs, but we also don't want to jump in too soon. Yeah. Of course, there's balance. At some point you do have to just get involved, but so we're trying to tread water carefully and make sure that we set up everything right, because we don't want to have one of those situations where we have one person hired who's literally expected to do everything by people who don't know what it actually looks like. And so Yeah, like I say, it's the Wild West, and so soon it will be out of the Wild West, but it'll take time. And we need to be careful about how we approach everything, so that we make as few dumb decisions as possible and make a lot of intelligent, strategic decisions.
Definitely, I understand. Yeah, because like you think about it, like for instance, like a coach, you know that they have to. If you think about it in a way, kind of like in regular sports. When you think about a team, like a football team losing, I mean, you can blame a player here and there if they're like an important player, like for instance, football. You can blame the quarterback, sure. But, the coach is the one telling the quarterback or whoever's, whatever position to do what they're doing. And they help coordinate that. And you can actually literally see that throughout the game. And you can't really do that so far with, Discord calls and stuff like that. It really comes down to like, one, the in-person matter, and then two, it's just like the results that we see and stuff like that. And it's like you said, it's hard for the university to justify like, oh, I'm gonna pay this guy, but I don't know what he's been doing for the past like 3 years. So why am I going to give him the highest position? So
yeah, exactly. And see, I think the ideal way that I want to approach it is that because I've spoken with athletics, and athletics has been amazing to us. A lot of people don't know, but athletics are the first people who found the money for our lab initially, and they championed our cause to the rest of the university administration. But they have told us, they're like, we don't care to bring it under our umbrella. They're struggling through COVID right now too, from players not playing in person. So, and I think that's actually the ideal situation, right? We don't have somebody come in over us and tell us, hey, this needs to be done this way. And so we're literally just learning ourselves and learning as players who play the games. And so I think, again, that's the ideal situation, is that we don't have people who don't know what they're talking about, or because it's not even like, because you can learn like a leader, somebody who knows how to lead people effectively and actually have the proper emotional intelligence to connect with other people. You don't need to be a video game player to do that for an esports org, but like in the current situation with things, that's not, again, like it's just us going through the learning process ourselves so that we can have the full spectrum of understanding. And so we're building it up slowly, but again, like things that are worth the time and effort sometimes take a lot of time. So
definitely, man, I definitely understand it. I know you, like you said, you do a lot of work, and even if it goes unnoticed, we're feeling it here down through the rankings.
Well, thank you. I've been meaning to cut you off and say thank you.
It's okay.
That really does matter for me to hear, because sometimes there's some days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to go do I have these things sitting on the back burner that I need to do, and I'm like, I haven't been doing them, and I have so much other stuff, like work priorities that of course take priority. And so it's like, there are times where I'm like, man, I don't know if I can keep doing this, but hearing it from the players, hearing it from people, again, people motivate you. And so as soon as I hear that from people, then I'm like, okay, I'm back on it. I'm back on the grind. I got to get this stuff done.
Definitely, man. And I'm going to make sure to post this down in general chat. Make sure to ping everybody, for anybody that's interested in esports here at NMSU, for anybody that's already here and participating in esports here at NMSU, or anybody that's considering it, whether you're in the high school or just looking to become a student. It doesn't really matter your age. If you're interested in esports and you're interested in gaming, you're in the right hands. I can speak firsthand. Matt here has provided his house, for example. Like the COD team, obviously they made it to, they're relatively successful, and we're playing in a pretty big league, and we all wanted to like play out of the same household or same location and area. We can't use the lab, so Matt over here actually volunteered his own place of living. Literally his roommates, he convinced his roommates to let us use their setups, and even though it was a little bit scuffed at the beginning, but he still made it happen. He made sure that we played, he made sure that we had the communication, and we won that game that we did play there. And later on throughout the tournament, he was obviously there helping us and providing for us. So if you guys are wondering, like, is esports worth it here at NMSU? It definitely is. It might not be the biggest right now due to COVID and stuff like that. But once all this clears over, once things get back to normal, I can guarantee that NMSU is going to be one of the top, if not the best, esports program in our region, Southwest, Southern New Mexico, Western Texas, all that stuff. So, Matt, thank you for coming on to the podcast. Thank you guys for listening. This is like obviously a lot of time and effort for you, Matt. I know your time is very valuable, so I definitely appreciate it. And hopefully we can get another talk in soon with some other people. Maybe we can get some. Your roommates were pretty cool when we did meet them, so maybe we can get them on a podcast if they're willing. I don't know.
I'll have to ask them. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course, man.
For your time as well.
Of course, and I appreciate it for you stopping by and obviously taking the time. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.